Do you feel like your mind has become a hostile territory, invaded by disturbing thoughts that seem to come from nowhere? Are you exhausted from battling unwanted mental images, worries, or ideas that feel completely foreign to who you know yourself to be? Does it feel like your own brain has turned against you, generating content that shocks, disgusts, or terrifies you? If these words resonate with your experience, take a deep breath and know this. You are not losing your mind, you are not dangerous, and you are not alone. What you're experiencing, intrusive thoughts, affects millions of people worldwide, and more importantly, there are proven pathways to reclaim your mental peace. What I'm about to share isn't theoretical comfort or empty reassurance. These are evidence-based strategies that have helped countless individuals transform their relationship with unwanted thoughts from one of terror and resistance to one of understanding and freedom. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how to break the cycle of intrusive thoughts, not by eliminating them entirely, but by learning to respond to them in ways that drain their power and restore your sense of mental safety. This is your roadmap from mental chaos to genuine inner calm. The intrusive thought paradox, understanding your unwanted mental visitors. Here's the first crucial truth that changes everything. Intrusive thoughts are not messages from your subconscious, prophecies of future behavior, or evidence of hidden desires. They are random mental events that every healthy brain produces, but some minds get stuck focusing on them. Our brains are constantly working, processing and organizing a flood of information, sorting through the millions of stimuli we encounter each day. Most of the time, our thoughts are in alignment with our experiences, decisions, emotions, and tasks that we are actively engaged in. The majority of our thoughts are purposeful, related to our work, conversations, relationships, or the plans we make for the future. These thoughts reflect our concerns, aspirations, and immediate needs. However, every now and then the brain generates thoughts that seem out of place, random, or even bizarre. These are the intrusive thoughts, the unexpected mental visitors that don't seem to fit with the narrative of our lives. They come in many forms: strange images, unsettling scenarios, or completely unrelated ideas that appear to be disconnected from what we are doing or feeling at the time. What's important to understand is that intrusive thoughts are not linked to anything significant about you. They do not carry secret messages, hidden desires, or reflect an underlying psychological issue. They are simply mental noise, distractions, distortions, and random signals that sometimes pop up in the mind without reason. To illustrate this, imagine your brain as a radio that is constantly scanning the airwaves for signals. Most of the time, it tunes into the channels that matter most to you: work-related thoughts, interactions with family and friends, cherished memories, or plans for the future. These are the frequencies that make up the soundtrack of your day-to-day life, and they keep you focused on what's important. But occasionally the radio picks up something unexpected: the static from a distant tower, random broadcasts from other stations, or emergency signals from faraway places. These are like the intrusive thoughts you encounter, unwanted signals that aren't relevant to you, yet briefly make their presence known in your mind. The key is recognizing that these thoughts are not important. They are simply part of the brain's random processing. They aren't meaningful, and they don't indicate anything about your desires, intentions, or future actions. The real problem arises when you mistake these random mental signals for important broadcasts. When you start treating these fleeting thoughts as if they hold hidden significance, or worse, as evidence of something negative about yourself or your character, you create a conflict within your mind. This conflict begins when you give the intrusive thought meaning and emotional weight that it simply doesn't deserve. When you react with horror, shame, guilt, or frustration in response to these thoughts, you begin a dangerous cycle. You may try desperately to suppress the thought or push it out of your mind, but in doing so, you're essentially cranking up the volume on the very station you want to eliminate. Instead of letting it pass unnoticed, you become fixated on it. The more attention you give to these thoughts, the more they seem to come back, louder and more frequent than before. The paradox is this: the more you struggle against the intrusive thoughts, the stronger their hold becomes. Your brain, designed to focus on what it perceives as threatening or important, interprets your intense emotional reaction as evidence that this thought needs monitoring. It believes that the thought is a signal of something that deserves attention, and as a result, it keeps bringing it to the forefront. The more you react, the more your brain believes that this thought should be given continuous focus. This sets off a cycle that looks like this: intrusive thought, intense emotional reaction, increased attention and focus, more frequent intrusive thoughts. This cycle can be exhausting, frustrating, and sometimes overwhelming. The harder you try to push the thought away or make it disappear, the more persistent it becomes. What was once a fleeting thought may begin to feel like an intrusive, uncontrollable force in your mind. But here's the breakthrough. The problem is not the thought itself, but the way you interact with it. The moment you understand that intrusive thoughts are simply random mental noise, something everyone experiences, your entire relationship with them changes. Instead of trying to fight them, judge them, or attach meaning to them, you can start to let them pass by without engaging with them. You can practice acknowledging the thought without giving it any power, recognizing it for what it is. Just a thought, not a reflection of your character or a predictor of your future actions. You can choose to let the thought exist without needing to respond to it. Instead of giving it your emotional energy or reacting with distress, you can calmly allow it to drift away. Over time, this practice weakens the cycle of intrusion. The less attention you give to the thought, the less power it holds over you. Intrusive thoughts lose their grip when they are no longer fed by your emotional responses. In the end, freedom doesn't come from eliminating these thoughts entirely, because, as most people find, that's often impossible, but from redefining your relationship with them. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts are just temporary mental events that come and go, like clouds passing through the sky. You have the ability to choose how to respond to them. By changing your approach, by practicing detachment, awareness, and acceptance, you can free yourself from the overwhelming power that intrusive thoughts seem to hold over you. Ultimately, the paradox is this: you don't have to eliminate intrusive thoughts to find peace. You simply need to stop giving them more importance than they deserve. When you stop engaging with them, when you stop reacting, you give yourself the freedom to live in the present moment without the constant interruption of unwanted mental visitors. The neuroscience of unwanted thoughts: why your brain does this. Intrusive thoughts are a natural part of the human experience, and they are far more common than many people realize. In fact, intrusive thoughts are not a sign of mental illness or a moral failing. Instead, they are evidence of a normally functioning brain, one that is perhaps a little too overzealous in its efforts to protect you. Your brain is designed to process countless stimuli every day, generating thousands of thoughts, most of which are unremarkable or inconsequential. Among these thoughts are random, bizarre, or even disturbing ones, thoughts that most people's brains simply dismiss without conscious awareness. However, for some individuals, certain factors can cause the brain's natural filtering system to become overly sensitive, making it more likely to get stuck on these unwanted thoughts. Rather than simply letting these thoughts pass by as irrelevant background noise, the brain's heightened alert system flags them as dangerous or important, and this leads to the experience of intrusive thoughts. Understanding the neuroscience behind this process can help you take a step back and recognize that these thoughts aren't a reflection of something wrong with you. They are simply an exaggerated response from a brain trying to protect you. Here are some of the key factors that can make your brain's filtering system become more active, causing these thoughts to take center stage. Stress and anxiety, the overactive security system. When your nervous system is in a state of heightened stress or anxiety, your brain enters what is known as a hypervigilant mode. In this state, your brain becomes overly alert to anything that might be threatening. This includes not only external threats, but also internal mental events, thoughts and memories that could signal danger or discomfort. The brain, in its protective nature, flags these thoughts as important, even though they may be completely unrelated to any real danger. As a result, intrusive thoughts, especially those that are disturbing or anxiety-provoking, become more frequent and intense. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions like fear, may become more active, making you more likely to interpret benign thoughts as something that requires urgent attention or action. This hypervigilance can lead to a cycle where the more your brain reacts to these thoughts, the more frequent they seem to become, reinforcing the anxiety and stress that triggered them in the first place. Perfectionism, setting impossible mental standards. People who have perfectionist tendencies often hold themselves to impossibly high moral or mental standards. When they experience thoughts that seem imperfect or out of alignment with their ideal self, they may perceive them as deeply alarming or morally wrong. Instead of acknowledging that these are just normal, random mental events, perfectionists tend to treat these intrusive thoughts as significant failures. They may believe that these thoughts reflect hidden flaws in their character or a potential for unacceptable behavior. The brain's natural filtering system becomes overwhelmed by the pressure to maintain an idealized image of oneself, leading to the constant re-examination and internal conflict over these imperfect thoughts. This internalized conflict causes the brain to keep cycling back to these thoughts, amplifying their significance and making it harder to dismiss them. Rather than just accepting that these are normal mental occurrences, the perfectionist brain becomes consumed by the need to correct or expel them, which ironically makes the thoughts more persistent. Rumination patterns, the trap of overthinking. Rumination refers to the habit of repeatedly analyzing and reanalyzing thoughts, often focusing on negative aspects or potential outcomes. This pattern of thinking can cause random mental events to gain more weight than they deserve. When we ruminate, we place an excessive amount of focus on certain thoughts, revisiting them over and over, trying to find a resolution or meaning. This can make an intrusive thought seem like something significant, when in reality, it's just a passing mental blip. By continuously replaying the thought in your mind, you inadvertently give it more attention, and as a result, the thought becomes more ingrained and harder to shake. Rumination creates a feedback loop, where the thought feels more important or troubling simply because we can't stop thinking about it. The more you focus on these thoughts, the more your brain is trained to continue searching for them, perpetuating the cycle of unwanted mental events. Life transitions, stressful events and mental overload. Life transitions, whether they are major life changes like moving to a new city, changing jobs or navigating a breakup, or more extreme events like trauma or loss, can create significant emotional stress. During periods of uncertainty, your brain is working overtime to process new information, emotions, and experiences. As your brain attempts to adapt to these changes, it can become overwhelmed. The brain's filtering system may start to flag thoughts as more important or threatening than they truly are, simply because it is already working at full capacity to process other forms of stress. During times of major emotional upheaval, your brain may be more likely to produce and focus on disturbing content, whether in the form of intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, or obsessive worries. In such cases, intrusive thoughts may emerge as an unintended coping mechanism, a reflection of the brain's struggle to make sense of the stress. The brain mistakenly identifies these thoughts as something that needs to be worked through, when in reality, they are simply byproducts of an overburdened mind. The first step toward healing: understanding the nature of intrusive thoughts. The most important realization is this: intrusive thoughts are a normal brain function that has gone slightly awry. They are not a sign of a breakdown, and they don't reflect your true desires, moral character, or future behavior. They are simply mental noise that gets amplified under certain conditions, especially when the brain's filtering system becomes hyperactive. Understanding that these thoughts are not a reflection of your character, but rather the result of an overactive security system, is the first step toward healing your relationship with your mind. When you accept that these thoughts are simply random, transient events that don't have lasting significance, you can begin to detach from them. Instead of fighting against them or giving them undue importance, you can allow them to pass by without reacting to them. This shift in perspective can help ease the burden of intrusive thoughts and restore balance to the brain's natural filtering system. In time, you'll learn to recognize that these thoughts are just part of being human, and not a sign of something broken or wrong within you. If this message resonates with you, and you're seeking more moments of peace and insight, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for daily reflections rooted in ancient wisdom and modern clarity. Common types of intrusive thoughts. You're not alone in this. Intrusive thoughts often fall into predictable categories, and recognizing these patterns can help normalize your experience. Harm-related thoughts, sudden images or ideas about hurting yourself or others, despite having no actual desire to cause harm. These thoughts are often the complete opposite of your values. which is exactly why they feel so disturbing. Contamination concerns fears about germs, diseases, or being polluted by certain substances or situations, even when rational mind knows the fears are exaggerated. Relationship doubts, sudden questions about whether you love your partner, whether they love you, or disturbing thoughts about infidelity. Despite being in a happy relationship, religious or moral scrupulosity, disturbing thoughts about sacred topics, moral violations, or fears of being evil, particularly common in people with strong ethical or religious values. Sexual content, unwanted sexual thoughts or images, often involving inappropriate partners, situations, or acts that go against your actual desires and values. Responsibility fears, obsessive worry about having caused harm through negligence. Did I hit someone with my car? Did I leave the stove on, even when you know you were careful? The crucial point: the content of intrusive thoughts is often completely opposite to your actual character and desires. This isn't coincidence. Your brain often generates disturbing content precisely because it violates your values, making it feel urgent and important to consider. The acceptance revolution: why fighting makes it worse. Here's a counterintuitive truth that liberates thousands of people. The more you fight intrusive thoughts, the stronger they become. This happens because of a psychological principle called the ironic process theory. When you try not to think about something, part of your brain must continuously monitor whether you're successfully not thinking about it. It's like someone telling you, don't think about a pink elephant. The moment you try to follow that instruction, you must think about pink elephants to know what not to think about. Instead of fighting intrusive thoughts, try this radical approach: complete acceptance. I notice I'm having the thought about Wei Qi. This is just my brain producing random content. I don't need to fight it, analyze it, or make it go away. It can be here while I focus on what actually matters to me. This isn't giving up or giving in. It's choosing not to waste your precious mental energy on content that has no real significance. When you stop feeding intrusive thoughts with attention and resistance, they naturally fade into the background noise of consciousness where they belong. The values compass: navigating by what matters most. One of the most powerful tools for dealing with intrusive thoughts is developing a clear sense of your authentic values. When disturbing thoughts arise, instead of asking, "What does this thought mean about me?" ask, "What do I actually care about? How do I want to show up in this moment?" Your values act as a compass that always points toward meaningful action, regardless of what temporary mental weather you're experiencing. If you value kindness, you can choose kind actions even while having unkind thoughts. If you value courage, you can behave bravely even while feeling afraid. Create a personal value statement: I am someone who cares about New Rima. Then, when intrusive thoughts try to convince you otherwise, return to this truth: regardless of what my brain is producing right now, I know what I actually value, and I can act from that place. This transforms intrusive thoughts from identity threats into minor inconveniences, like having a song stuck in your head. Annoying perhaps, but completely irrelevant to who you are and how you choose to live. Daily practices for mental freedom. Morning intention setting. Start each day by setting an intention to treat all thoughts, wanted and unwanted, as temporary mental events rather than important messages. The leaves on a stream. Visualization. When intrusive thoughts arise, imagine them as leaves floating down a stream. You can watch them pass by without jumping in the water to chase them. Mindful labeling. When you notice an intrusive thought, simply label it. I'm having an unwanted thought about my prayers, or my brain is producing disturbing content right now. This creates distance and reduces emotional impact. The 10-second rule. When an intrusive thought appears, commit to doing nothing about it for 10 seconds. Don't analyze, suppress, or react. Just notice and wait. Often, the thought will lose intensity or disappear entirely. Value-based action. Each time you choose to act according to your values despite having intrusive thoughts, you're strengthening your ability to live authentically regardless of mental noise. Gratitude for mental variety. Paradoxically, appreciate your brain's creativity, even when it produces unwanted content. This reduces the shame and resistance that fuel intrusive thought cycles. The mindfulness solution. Present moment awareness. While anxiety pulls you into future catastrophes and intrusive thoughts convince you that mental content requires immediate analysis, mindfulness offers a different possibility, fully inhabiting this moment where life actually occurs. Mindfulness for anxiety and intrusive thoughts isn't about achieving a calm, empty mind. It's about developing a different relationship with whatever mental content arises. Instead of getting swept away by thoughts and feelings, you learn to observe them from a place of steady awareness. The observer self. Imagine a part of you that can watch thoughts and feelings arise and pass away without being overwhelmed by them. This observer isn't trying to change your experience, it's simply witnessing with compassion. Anchor breathing. When anxiety spikes or intrusive thoughts multiply, return your attention to your breath, not to control it, but to use it as an anchor in the storm of mental activity. Body awareness. Anxiety and intrusive thoughts often disconnect you from physical sensation. Regular body scans help you stay grounded in present moment reality rather than lost in mental projections. Thought labeling. When disturbing thoughts arise, simply note them. Worrying thoughts are here, or intrusive content is arising. This creates space between you and the mental activity. The goal isn't to achieve perfect mindfulness, but to remember that you are larger than any temporary mental weather passing through your awareness.